is where all this is heading. With Israel deliberately sabotaging the so-called ceasefire deal, Israel not simply resuming its genocidal onslaught against the people of Gaza this weekend, but escalating it to unparalleled levels. An Israeli minister has made clear what this means. Now, before I read to you what this minister has said, a key ally of Benjamin Netanyahu, and describing it as chilling, I'm afraid really doesn't do it justice. Let's just begin by listening to what Donald Trump said, which is what this Israeli politician is responding to.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
So Trump has said that if all the hostages aren't released, let all hell break out. We should note that all the hostages being released this Saturday wasn't part of the ceasefire agreement. 3 hostages were due to be released. And more to the point, it is Israel which has violated the agreement over and over again, killing multiple Palestinians in Gaza, refusing, crucially, humanitarian aid, which was promised, preventing seriously ill patients from travelling to receive medical treatment, including children with cancer, blocking talks on the second phase of the ceasefire deal from progressing, and that's before we even discuss the murderous campaign against the Palestinians that they've unleashed in the West Bank. Now, as the New York Times reports, the current standoff stems in part from Hamas's accusation that Israel has not upheld its promises for the first phase of the ceasefire. Israel was required to send hundreds of thousands of tents into Gaza, a promise that Hamas says Israel has not kept. Speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter, 3 Israeli officials and 2 mediators said that Hamas's claims were accurate. The New York Times goes on to say, regardless, officials and commentators say this dispute can be resolved relatively easily if Israel allows more aid to Gaza. The more serious issue is the widespread perception that Mr. Netanyahu is undermining the negotiations over an extended truce. That's what the New York Times said. Now, the Israeli newspaper Maariv also reports that the Israeli and security establishment confirmed that so far, Hamas has not violated the ceasefire deal. And this weekend, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz ran a story headlined, Israeli sources believe Netanyahu intends to derail Gaza ceasefire as delegation heads to Doha, with an Israeli source quoted as saying, it's a show. Netanyahu is signalling quite clearly that he doesn't want to move to the next phase. He's sending a team without a mandate and without the ability to do anything. Another Israeli source said the following, the process is working, hostages are being released, but Hamas is doing this with the expectation of a second stage leading to a full ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Once Hamas realizes there won't be a second stage, they may not complete the first. That is, the Israeli state is lying through its teeth about the ceasefire deal and is preparing to resume its genocidal offensive, come what may, and is simply looking for an excuse. Now, it should also be noted that Yair Lapid, the former Israeli prime minister and opposition figure, who nonetheless has supported his state's genocidal mayhem, said in an interview this week, Hamas cannot launch an attack on us. October the 7th is far away. I believe there is a chance that this is another semi-artificial crisis that can be resolved by Saturday. We need to work with the mediators correctly and intentionally. Hamas is responding to the fact that the Prime Minister does not want to move to the next stage. Now, let me read to you what Shlomo Karhi, Netanyahu's Minister of Communications and a member of the ruling party Likud, has come out and said about Trump's proposal. This is the chilling, to say the least, tweet I was referring to in the context that I've just set out. When dealing with a Nazi terrorist organisation, one must be prepared for such violations. Hamas thinks it can gamble on the lives of our hostages, a grave mistake. No more beats, no more games. The response must be exactly as President Trump has suggested. Completely halt humanitarian aid, cut off electricity, water and communications, and use brutal and disproportionate force until the abductees return. At the same time, clear Gaza of all, in quotes, uninvolved. The immigration plan must begin immediately. It is time to open the gates of hell on Hamas, and this time without any restrictions on our heroic fighters. There is nothing subtle about this. Cutting off all the essentials of life, all of the things that make the continued existence of human life possible, use brutal and disproportionate force, ethnically cleanse the entire population, behave, this time without any restrictions on Israeli soldiers, as if they were somehow acting with restraint over the last 16 months of genocidal atrocities. Now, Trump held a press conference with Jordan's unelected King Abdullah II and reiterated his commitment to the grave war crime of ethnically cleansing the population of Gaza.
Or that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What is that?
There's no reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually, where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East. It's going to be for the people in the Middle East, but I think it could be a diamond. It could be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East. And you're going to have peace. It's going to bring peace in the Middle East. Gaza, the way it is right now, every 10 years, you're going to have the same thing happening. I've watched it so long, all the death and destruction of Gaza. The civilization's been wiped out in Gaza. No, it's going to be a tremendous thing. It's fronting on the sea. It's going to be a great economic development job. It's going to put people to work, a lot of people to work, and those people are all going to be from the Middle East.
Clearly, this is deranged, stating we're not going to have to buy Gaza. We're going to have Gaza, speaking here like a fascist dictator. Note as well, as discussing the death and destruction of Gaza, he says that a civilization has been wiped out in Gaza. Here he is admitting that Israel has committed genocide, though he probably doesn't realise it. Again, as Article 2nd of the Genocide Convention clearly states, the definition of genocide includes deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Then listen to this.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
And Mr. President...
Deranged, completely deranged. Again, speaking like a fascist dictator. Then listen to King Abdullah II.
Mr. President, I think we have to keep in mind that there is a plan from Egypt and the Arab countries. We're being invited by Mohammed bin Salman to discussions in Riyadh. I think the point is how do we make this work in a way that is good for everybody? Right. Obviously, we have to look at the best interests of the United States, of the people in the region, especially to my people of Jordan. And we're going to have some interesting discussions today. I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in a very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on the Gaza challenges.
Well, how utterly pathetic. That's certainly what I thought. Other observers would say that he's trying to bargain there, trying to flatter Donald Trump and find ways of getting leverage rather than antagonising him. Now, it should be noted that the brilliant journalist Richard Sanders, who mentions also another brilliant journalist, Peter Oborne, says the following: King Abdullah had no choice in DC but to be placatory to Trump, but he's clearly playing for time to see if the Arabs can agree a unified position. When Peter Oborne and myself were in Amman last week, that's the capital of Jordan, the dynasty's position was crystal clear. Now, what that position was, which he wrote in an article for Middle East Eye, along with Peter Oborne, was that Jordan would literally go to war if Palestinians were expelled into its territory, not least because Jordan would be fatally destabilised and unable to accommodate an influx of refugees, regardless of facilitating the crime of ethnic cleansing. Now, in a statement after the meeting, the king stated, I reiterated Jordan's steadfast position against the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. This is the unified Arab position. Rebuilding Gaza without displacing the Palestinians and addressing the dire humanitarian situation should be the priority for all. Furthermore, the Egyptian dictator Sisi was reportedly furious with the US and Israel, sending, it was reported, clear messages to Washington behind the scenes, cancelling an upcoming visit to see Trump, telling the US there was no prospect of the ethnic cleansing plan happening and no Egyptian land would be allocated for it. Indeed, instead, the Egyptian regime has come up with a counter-proposal, declaring its intention to present an integrated vision for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip in a way that guarantees the survival of the Palestinian people on their land and in a manner consistent with the legitimate and legal rights of this people. Look, whether the ceasefire collapses this weekend or after, it's screamingly clear what's happening here. The Israeli state believes it has a unique opportunity with the backing of the US president to finally dispose of the Palestinian people in Gaza and then do the same in the West Bank, and then forge a greater Israel. A genocide in plain sight. No one can say they didn't know. And as I keep saying, all of those who cheered us on and facilitated this must face a reckoning. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments. Do help us as we expand our operations across every different media platform to reach ever greater audiences with the truth and challenge this dire media landscape at patreon.com/ownjones84. I'll speak to you soon.